I just live my life, simple life, and I don't tell anybody about my problems.
Because I'd always done everything for myself.
Elder abuse is a horrific crime, whether it's physical abuse, neglect, or financial scams. It takes a huge toll on that population. It happens to all elders across racial lines, color lines, language lines, socioeconomic class. It affects our whole community. And the one thing that they all have in common is that they need our help.
She virtually has no jewelry left. They'd always steal everything, whether it was money or jewelry. She was gardening out in front, and they took a TV while she was gardening in front out the back door, along with her credit cards.
It has changed me. You know, it's made me have some fear that I never had before.
I'm broke now. They did that to me. I have nothing.
If my house is foreclosed on, I'll probably have to live in my car.
If I hadn't been involved, he would have been totally fleeced by this lady.
I feel like I'm intimidated, and I feel like I'm, well, I don't like to be a victim. You know, I just go about my life like I'm not a victim, but in reality, I do feel that I am a victim.
It happens because people think older people are easy marks and easy targets. People who for years believed in the value of a handshake, the importance of your word, are becoming easy marks because they hold to those values, the values they gave us.
Freedom from elder abuse is a basic human right because all human beings should be able to live in a peaceful environment, be treated with respect and dignity, and elder abuse takes that away from older people. When abusers gain and maintain power and control over their victims, they're making choices for the victims, and they're not allowed to live with respect and kindness and dignity and make choices in their own lives.
Since we may not always hear from the victims of elder abuse and neglect, we need to know how to recognize it. And that means lots of folks need to know how to recognize it, including doctors, nurse practitioners, people in emergency rooms. We recently had a case here at the court where a bank called the police department as well as Adult Protective Services.
Every day at work, I have to review reports of abuse, and I work with a group of social workers who are very dedicated. We are vested with the responsibility to investigate the allegations of abuse, to assess the needs of the elders, and to formulate plans of actions to assist them. It has never been an easy task.
One day my mom came home from visiting her and said, "Do you know that your aunt has a security door on her bedroom now?" So I came over, I asked her to come and have lunch with me so I could get her away from all the busyness that was here. And I told her, "Do you realize what's going on?" And she was starting to realize what was and the potential of happening. And from there I had received the cards on the social workers and the Adult Protective Services and such, and it all went from there. And thank God, because I couldn't have done it without their help.
She had a situation where her home was taken over. We arranged to have 7 restraining orders placed on the 7 addicts that were living here. We have so many cases where an elderly person is living in their own home, they own the home outright, and their children or their grandchildren or a caregiver slowly takes over, and the elderly person becomes the prisoner in their own home. With the efforts of APS and Legal Assistance for Seniors, we're able to keep her in her house. The goal in APS is to encourage our clients to live in the least restrictive environment.
Our responsibility is to help people remain in their homes, if at all possible.
There are lots of similarities, I think, between elder abuse, child abuse, and domestic violence. The key one being that it's often a family member or someone who has an ongoing relationship with the victim, who's the abuser, that ongoing relationship often involving love or an expectation of trust. It makes these situations more complicated than stranger violence because the victim is wanting to keep the family together in some ways, is hoping that the abuser will change their behavior.
An elderly woman, 78 years old, got into a verbal argument with her son when he came home intoxicated. The son picked up a chair and struck her 3 times over the head. She fell dizzy. Her husband called the police. The paramedics responded and treated her at the scene. This is not the first time that her son hit her, but this is the first time it was reported to the police. The police arrested the son and granted an emergency protection order. We found out there were previous reports on her, but she refused to cooperate and resist to accept help. She might resist because she loved her son. She will protect and financially support her son no matter what her son has done. We work to get a permanent restraining order. Home is the place where people should feel secure. Unfortunately, it is not true for elders being abused. Unlike kids, they attend school and they have people around them. Elders are alone. They have little interaction with the outside world. The isolation and feeling of loneliness put them in a very vulnerable situation.
And people take advantage of them, and they physically hurt them. They fail to take care of them when older people become frail and need help. They take their money, they steal their assets, and they steal their dignity. People who are victims of all forms of elder abuse are going to die sooner than they should have just because of the trauma they go through. This is a crime.
My dad had a great life, except for the last 5.5 months of his 94.5 years. Since my stepmom's death in 2000, my dad also enjoyed a wonderful social life in his Aptos neighborhood. He was befriended by a handful of neighbors who took a loving interest in him and provided a life-enriching flurry of activities, parties, dinners, and just basic company. However, his life was shattered as if a glass had fallen off from this podium when he learned that his love, trust, and friendship for his neighbor had been betrayed. His health took a downward spiral. He was depressed and distraught. My dad was a very proud man, and now he spent his days crying and questioning his own judgment. His statement, "Because I'm old, she thinks I'm stupid," was painful to hear. I almost wish his dementia had been bad enough to protect him from figuring this out. But he knew, and it destroyed him. He soon lost the will to continue his fight for his own health issues. My dad deserved to spend the last 5.5 months of his life in peace, surrounded by those who he loved and who loved him. And this is when I look at her directly. Your actions betrayed someone who genuinely loved and cared about you. You not only broke his spirit, you broke his heart. And she was a direct contribution to his death.
In some cases, you have older adults who may no longer have capacity, and this is another way that elder abuse is different than working with younger domestic violence victims, for example, that you have people who may need more assistance because of physical limitations or cognitive limitations.
An 86-year-old Russian-speaking man was unduly influenced by his caretaker into changing his will, into almost buying a house for the same caretaker, into adult adoption. So my client was about to adopt an adult caretaker in order to legalize the transfer of everything that my client owns to caretaker. Adult Protective Services investigated this case, and as a result, my client is safe right now. He's conserved by one of his real sons.
In my opinion, there's no one safe from elder abuse. My suggestions to someone who discovers that there may be some elder abuse in their family is go to the county first. Seek any nonprofit organization that you can, and that's exactly what we had experienced, is someone being able to take it wholeheartedly and saying, what do we need to do and what are the issues, and then stayed with us for a while, not just, okay, here's what you need to do, the information, and figure it out. But instead they actually helped us and worked with us.
And people better get a clue. That's one thing we know. We're all going to get old, and we're all going to be potential victims. And this is of epidemic proportions. A lot of this is never reported. People feel embarrassed. They feel like they've made stupid mistakes, not only for the victim, but the people watching over them. I felt a little bit of that. How could I be so stupid not to pick this up? But we're all vulnerable.
I know that our local, and in many of the adult protective services agencies in California, for example, are underfunded. They're understaffed. The reality is that for those offices to be able to do their work, that we can't have social workers sitting at a desk filling out paperwork. We need to have enough support and resources there so that they can actually leave the desk and go out and knock on the doors and check on the seniors in our communities. And in that way, we, I think, would be more effective in being able to engage in prevention, or at least early intervention, when there's a case of suspected senior abuse. And so that's a very specific aspect of how we work as a system that if we focused on, I think we'd actually improve what we're doing.
I wasn't familiar with Adult Protective Services, and I think more people should be.
And you've been great service to me, so I really appreciate what you're doing.
I would say to advocates for elders, never give up. Don't give up. Never give up. That's what I would say.
The road that we travel on may seem long and weary. Up and down and all around may never end. How can we see clearly? We can make it if we try. I'm stuck in you and I. No need for a wonder why. Sometimes I might be afraid. That's when we gotta say, hey, it's gonna be alright. 'Cause we can make it if we try to hold on to your